Hi there, I'm Katie Morton. I'm an intuitive and an energy healer.
And I'm Jennifer Palmer. I'm the owner of Nourishing Journey, an intuitive and energy healer, and friend to Andrei. Hi, Andrei.
Andrei Stoica. I'm an energy healer, Chinese medicine practitioner, Arcturian healing practitioner.
Welcome to our little
Corner
world, whatever it is we're doing here. We just love having fun, and we love interviewing great people. And so we thought it would be awesome for you guys to get to know Andrei, because he is fastly becoming one of my favorite people in the whole world. So we do love you, Andrei. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
What do I do? Okay. So part of what I do is Chinese medicine, medical qigong, and that's in the Taoist tradition. And so as I'm really kind of refining like what I do, I look at energy fields, I look at people, and I look and see, you know, all the different layers, like, so from the physical to the energetic to kind of what's called the etheric structure of the body, and then other layers like the spiritual structures, the mind, the emotions, all of that as one kind of coherent energy field. And then I structure that. So that's all pretty much within the framework of Chinese medicine. And I have some help from kind of the Arcturians. Healing is a way to kind of tap into kind of like your other dimensional help, right? So whether it's Arcturian, whether you have, and everyone has like their higher self or some, like a guardian angel or you know, the angelic hierarchy, like they're all here to help. And there's a way to communicate, there's a way to structure your energy so that you are able to receive that and dialogue and really kind of be in a coherent energy field, as well as really be sovereign over your own energy. So that's what I do.
So like, how did you get into all of this? I'm not even sure if I really know the full story. This is not something that people wake up and go, I am going to be an Arcturian healer. I'm going to do this crazy qigong stuff. I'm going to connect with ET, and you know, all is good. You know.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. Actually, so I got an energy healing a little while back, and what she noticed was that kind of in my energetic body, right, there was she was like, wow, you have like cut wiring, like these connections. Like they were made, but then they were just like, it's almost like you just like cut yourself off. And I was also listening to this guy, Andrew Bartzis. He's an Akashic record reader, just like on a really big scale. He's called the Galactic Historian. And he taps into like the whole kind of, like the Akashic records is kind of, what's a good, like the quantum field of information just for the whole kind of galaxy. And he does lots of readings. He does lots of videos, Andrew Bartzis. And so he did a whole series of calls where people kind of had this, right? At a soul level, they decided to incarnate at this time. And it's almost just like they cut themselves off. So it's just like they wanted to just pass as like normal. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, a series of life events would happen and they would remember all of these things. So I was roughly normal. I mean, I don't really think normal is like a thing that exists, but definitely not grown up intuitive. Some people are, which is probably a mixed blessing if you ask them. So I grew up in Romania. Well, I grew up here. I was born in Romania. We moved at a very young age. And that, I mean, I just remember as like a little Romanian kid in America, that was like really kind of terrifying. But anyway, so I got through that. And in high school, I was just interested in martial arts. So I started doing that. And then again, here's that like cut wiring piece. It's just like, you feel like something's missing. You feel like something's like greater. And so I got into martial arts, the concept of energy, got into meditation, and I knew that there was something else, there was something kind of to it. And so I did that for many, many years, still do, obviously, but probably this past year, I really had a big awakening where it was just very tangible and very just like obvious and very real. And it was just like kind of like reconnected in a big way. that's when I got into the Arcturian stuff. I just made a decision with myself to just be like 100% all in, and that was really the point. And then just things happen. Like I've been doing qigong. I've been feeling energy for I don't know, 8-9 years, a while. But it just like was just that much more tangible, that much more like switched on in the last year or so. And so I think everyone has this, where it's like whether you're into the whole idea of past lives and cut wiring or not, everyone has this. We wake up, we forget. We wake up, we forget. And it's really, it comes down to a choice to see, like, you know, how awake do I want to be? Who do I want to connect with? What do I want to do? And then to what extent am I in? And you can always be like, well, I just need a break for a while. Like, let me just not do, let me not seek out information or activations and integrate. And that's also really healthy too.
So in case people don't understand what activations are and what it means to integrate energy,
yes,
you want to discuss that real quickly?
Yeah. So it's, I mean, you can use like the electronic kind of or computer model. It's like you have all this software, you have all, I mean, it's hardware and software. And it's just like I taught a class on telepathy last night, and I was like, well, it's kind of like an email account you just didn't even know you had. So the first step is to check the account. The next step is then to clear out the junk mail. And then the next step is to figure out how you want to consciously communicate. And it's really like that.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that. So we're big into the law of one. So if anyone hasn't heard about that, go ahead and look it up. There's a lot out there on it. But for us, when I coach people on developing, you know, intuition or telepathy or any of these sort of intuitive gifts, it really helps to also be have your heart in a good place of service in order to connect that heart and third eye. Because otherwise, you know, you want to be dialing the right channels and getting in the right beings before you connect. So that's always been my experience.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we look in like just the physical world, like, you know, who do you want to connect with? And who, you know, has your best interest, and who's really heart-centered and who's not. Again, in the spiritual world, it's even more intense.
Yeah. A little bit.
Well, and I have to say, what you said about being able to feel energy, that's so helpful for, especially if it's like telepathy between other people. You can kind of feel other people's energy to feel whether it's, you know, I don't know, good, bad, or left of center, I don't know, or whatever. But, and in spirits too, I think sometimes being able to feel the space you're in and who you're connecting with can be pretty helpful.
Yeah. So, and that's an important part.
Of energy healing, right?
Yeah, totally. So even with, you know, people say, okay, you want to be psychic, you want to open up your third eye. And yeah, there's you kind of, that is almost your prerequisite, both the third eye and then like the kind of the pillar above the head. But if you only have that and you don't integrate it in your heart and in your body, you're going to miss out on, so this is the thinking center. You can get a lot of information, and you do, and people do, and it's like overload. And then the feeling center, or like the emotional processing and feeling center, and then the physical feeling center. And if those aren't plugged into like your kind of galactic antenna, you can get a lot of information, but you can't really discern, because you're not going to get emotional content and you're not going to get feeling content. So imagine you get like 3 messages from whatever, and it's just information, and they're all basically the same, and you can't really figure out which is which. But then you plug that into your whole energy field and your whole body senses and feels and perceives. And it's almost like it's like a natural like BS detector, because you feel the energetic, the emotional quality to it, and if it feels more manipulative, if it feels more not from a good place, or you feel it in your body and you're just like, nuh-uh. No.
But you know, that also brings up for me why it's so important to do the healing of our shadow, because if we have a lot of baggage that we have not looked at and dealt with, then you're going to start having an inability to necessarily connect with what's truth and what feels right as well. And I think it can actually skew some of the deeper understanding of, is this true or not, if you haven't healed more deeply. So I think that that's another great reason why what you do is so important, because you're not just teaching people how to connect and how to get information and things like that, but you're teaching them how to heal as well, which is so vital in my opinion.
Yeah. So there's I mean, kind of healing and activation, and they both they circle. It's not like you do one and you're like, I'm healed, good, all right, here we go. It's always a counterbalancing, and we talk about the law of one, and very long story short, are you service to self or are you service to other? I think you have to be a little bit of both and integrate, because that's still a polarity. In general, you're going to be more service to other as like a general like theme. But if you're 100% one way or the other, that's not healthy. So you activate and you're like, good, I'm here for humanity, but you can't take care of yourself and hold down a job and all of that. Then you got to be a little service to self, like self-care, and then so you can serve others in a really coherent way. Otherwise, like, okay, good, I'm here for like, I don't know, a week, a month, however long you can last, and then you burn yourself out. And so it really is like a yin yang symbol. It's like the classic like Tai Chi Taoist symbol. There's yin, there's yang, and then there's integration. It's actually three. And so when you're integrated, then you can be like completely just open and embodied, and it's just that much more powerful. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately, right, you are kind of service to other, but not as a polarity, as an integrated kind of being.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I tend to think of service to self versus service to others. It's an interesting conversation because it's all philosophical, right? And but I think I tend to think of it as, service to self is more like a selfish rather than self-care. It's more like service to self regardless of what it does to others, where self-care to me is, well, we have to take care of this temple. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can be of service to others. It's not necessarily, I guess the way I look at it is not necessarily...
it's not service to self to take care of yourself, if that makes sense. I know this sounds like
because we are other selves.
Right. I know it sounds like we're splitting hairs, but I do think in the law of when they say you're either service to self or your service to self and others. Mm-hmm. So there is actually that caveat where you're service to self and others, and that is a polarity. So the other polarity is your only service to self, and your job is to basically control and manipulate other people to serve you. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to serve yourself and others. So those are the two polarities. And then if you're in the middle, it's like you're sort of undecided or you don't really know.
Yeah, we polarized for the ascension.
Yeah. And okay, so like in a higher, like to what extent do you integrate you as part of a collective?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know the law of one in and out. I'm certainly not an expert on it. My understanding of it from what I've heard and read over the years with it, and what I've also downloaded from my guides, it's interesting. I can't remember where I heard it or read it, but the Pleiadians evidently thought that service to others meant being a martyr. Mm-hmm. And then they realized that wasn't what it was supposed to be. You're not supposed to self-sacrifice. You're supposed to integrate the idea of being of service to others while also still caring for self, because as you care for self, you are caring for others.
It's all are one.
Yeah. But if you're of self-service, if you're service to self, it's like, it doesn't matter what it does to others. You're only in it for yourself.
Yeah. And that's kind of the evolutionary perspective. You go from a separate kind of physical being, and then you could also be a separate energetic being, to a completely integrated into kind of like the cosmic web or something like that. And so as you serve others, you also serve yourself. Sometimes, you need to take a time out and be like, I can't do sessions this week. And that's fine. Yeah. Versus like, I'm going to do sessions, and this happens. Like people will give out empowerments, and the whole guru thing is falling apart because, people are literally going to worship you. And so you're tuning up their energy, but like you're taking off the top, right? You're getting that. So that's that like negative, like service to self. that you're that is kind of happening and falling apart in like the spiritual community. And the collapse of the guru is kind of a really big theme these days. And it's hopefully, right, moving in a direction where it's an independent path of spiritual practice and initiation. But then you want to be careful. You're independent, but then you're not service to self as like, okay, well, I'm going to get enlightened and all of that, and then shut off from others. It's an independent path that you follow your own truth, but then that helps you see the big picture that you are kind of part of self and other. It's actually like you don't really, you understand your greater role of being part of a collective, part of, you know, the cosmic web, however you want to imagine it. And you, whatever that you do is for the good of all.
Yeah. Well, and I find it interesting too. I had a hard time. I've definitely looked into some gurus and things like that, and I've never been one to want to follow it. I tend to just be very independent myself anyway. I just listen to whatever makes sense in this little head of mine, which is not always accurate, but at least I know it doesn't lead me astray. But with the gurus, I think what's important is my guides have definitely said that now is a time for our own empowerment, to step into our divine power. And that's just not something we can do when we're looking at somebody else on a pedestal. And so I do agree. I think it's time for that guru model to fall, and for all of us to be empowered to step into our own divine nature and really explore who we are as a collective. I totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a couple of things with the guru model. We're programmed to give our power away and kind of like worship a supreme ruler, a supreme being, right? So it happened with a whole history of religious programming and all of that. Mm-hmm. So now, okay, fine, it's not religion, but you're basically worshiping like celebrities and whatever sports team that you're into, or leaders. I mean, leaders not so much anymore because they're clearly all corrupt, but some people still do. They see this and they're just like, oh, but like he's like, and so, but that's, you look at that, that's we can get into like where that maybe came from. But I mean, don't even go down the conspiracy rabbit hole. Just see if it's true, to see like, to what extent are you programmed to, if someone has some skill, that's one skill, that's one level of development. And just because it's a spiritual skill, it's a spiritual capacity, doesn't mean that they're well-rounded, and definitely doesn't mean that you should give up your sovereignty because you want to learn that skill. And that's a huge piece.
That's interesting, because a lot of my clients who, there's sometimes a temptation when you are going for spiritual guidance on a regular basis to give your power away to, to the person delivering the message. And one thing that my guides have been, and everyone's guides have been really clear about lately, is that people need to learn self-discernment. It's important to go get guidance if you can't get it yourself. But at the end of the day, you have got to discern the messages for yourself, and you have to evaluate it, and you have to see if it's true for you. You can't just blindly follow anyone or anything, even if it's guidance. And my guides show me how to connect with the inner soul and that collective consciousness, so that I can get messages from within instead of an external, being or a group of beings who can communicate with me. Still mainly how I get guidance, but at least I also have the option to go inside to discern what's happening.
Yeah, and that's almost like another refinement of I'm reading a couple books. This guy Tim Wilde is really good. I like him. He talks about like the 13 chakra template, and he really brings a lot of cool stuff out there. And he was saying like he was totally tapped into his guides and the archangels and what have you. And then it got to a point where that shut off, not like completely, but it was less of an external thing and more of an internal thing. And I mean, it freaked him out, rightfully so. But it's then because you actually, as like an integrated spiritual being, you kind of get to that level where you don't need that external guidance, because you resonate with that yourself. And so you have the structure and the capacities of some of those beings that is just then, you know, it's like you connect with someone for so long and you start to act like them. And you start to kind of awaken those capacities. So it's just like, I don't need to call out to develop this and this. I can handle this myself. So what you can handle expands, and then, you know, you're always kind of supported and you're always held. So that's another kind of refinement.
Yeah, definitely. It requires that ability to really see your own ego clearly, because that's what distorts the messages, and to kind of sail inside past all those layers of the ego, and you can kind of see them go. And then, you know, you get within to that little spark of God in the soul. Feels real good. Highly recommend.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, what have been your biggest influences? Like who do you look up to that has helped you find that divine nature within yourself?
Yeah. So Teresa of Avila was a big one. That's so my website now is called Interior Castle Wellness. And I mean, I kind of just got, actually, she's right over there. That was kind of, I don't want to say this. Yeah, that was kind of an initiation piece. Like I just had the thought, like the thought form, like entering the castle in my head. And she talks about kind of structuring like your energy field. And she talks about like the 7 interior mansions, which is kind of the chakra system, but like a little different. And so that model, so between that and also like the Taoists talk about the inner landscape. And so a lot of just Taoist teachings have been fundamental to me. I've had many teachers. I've had, my first Qigong teacher, Suzanne Friedman, was really big and just kind of not only showing me how to do things, but just like embodying it. And I realized like who taught me to scan energy? Like no one really, like she kind of modeled it, but it's something that kind of my energy field that resonated with, and then I could kind of do it. Currently Jean Eng is a huge influence. Love his work with Arcturians.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I think it's about time to wrap up. So final thoughts?
Yeah, what have you got planned and how can people get a hold of you?
So yeah, you can reach me, my website, interiorcastlewellness.com. I have Qigong workshops. I'm playing with online classes on different topics. My new thing, I'm eventually establishing kind of an energy medicine school. But the preliminary phases is like, well, let's just get some people in for some workshops. I'm doing something called a Qigong healing activation. So we'll talk about some things, we'll do some exercises, and then we'll do like an energy transmission. That's one of the big pieces. That's kind of a lost art is if someone has something embodied in their energy field, they can transmit that. So I'm basically teaching people how to structure that in their energy field so that they can embody it and transmit it. And yeah, I'll have to schedule another Nourishing Journey Qigong series.
Yeah. Well, and I have to give props to Andrei because I have to say, as a woman in her mid-40s, I have started going through menopause and I was getting hot flashes. And I have to say, you know, Andrei did a medical Qigong session for me and I haven't had one since. And that was, what, 3 months ago?
Yeah, that's a while ago.
Yeah, and I was getting them daily. So
well done.
Yeah, seriously.
And that's the other piece, just from a medical perspective, like anything, any medical condition, you look at you peel away the layers, you look at the energetic blueprint and you see like, well, how does my energy field support either this condition or not? And when you kind of go from that level as a foundation, that's going to lead to like a lasting change. And then you can talk about treatments. You can talk about like there's definitely herbs. There's things you can do, things you can not do, diet, all of that. But the more foundational you go in your the structure of your energy field, the structure of how does that support what you want to do, and then go from there.
Sweet.
Awesome. You're awesome.
You are awesome. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah,
And I'm so blessed that we've gotten to know you.
yeah. Well, let's do more of these. It'd be cool to do different topics. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Cool.
Thank you,
All
Andrei.
right. Thanks for joining us.
Guys.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.